What's up, guys? We're on the range today doing episode 1 of the Poverty Shockwave build. In this series, we're going to be putting together a Mossberg Shockwave that is a functional home defense gun, meeting my criteria for a functional two-handed home defense gun. And we're going to do it as cheaply as possible. We are not going to just cheap out and lose capability though. Like, I want to guarantee that this meets my criteria. And so my criteria for a good home defense gun, it's got to be reliable. We've got to be able to sight it and shoot it well, precisely, because we're accountable for all the pellets that come out of this. Every projectile that leaves this gun, we have to make it hit our target. And then, yeah, we've got to be able to see what we need to shoot. Today we're going to focus on sighting. And I'm going to use a few different methods of sighting this gun, a few different sights that are on the budget side, starting with our cheapest, just sighting over the barrel, right? We know the factory bead on these guns is absolutely worthless. It is exactly the same as just having no bead on the gun. So I have a no bead barrel here. We're going to be shooting that, see if I can make hits with that gun at the outer edge of home defense distances, which is 15 yards for our testing. Then we're going to be going to a bead sight, an upgraded bead sight. So the XS Big Dot is the most popular option there. I'll be running that, and we'll see if we can make quality, repeatable hits with that. And then we're going to be moving into some iron sights. So this is a budget option, as well as this. So for our first upgraded iron sight system, I'll still count this. I think this is still a bead sight the way we're going to use it, because we're not using a rear sight with it. But I've got the UTG clamp-on front sight. We're going to clamp that on our barrel here and just run that and see if we can make quality hits with just a taller front sight. And then we will hit these guys. So these represent any iron sight that you could get, just AR iron sights on a UTG rail mount here. I have this UTG rail mounted as far forward as possible to get those sights right as far away from my face as possible. Face is going to be here. I don't want to get bopped by those irons, just like I set up my optics. And we've got a really short sight radius here. I know some of you are looking at this thinking, how in the hell could you ever use these sights with such a short sight radius? Well, I want to remind you guys, with a good gun like a little LCR snubby with a decent front sight on it, I can make hits past 100 yards. So this has about the sight radius of that Ruger LCR, of a little snub-nosed revolver, but it has the benefit of having a more precise rear aperture. So I have high expectations for this sight setup, even though it looks a little silly, but we'll see, right? So at 15 yards, we are going to go for group sizes, which means we are going to be shooting slugs today. All right, guys, I'm at 15 yards away from a USPSA cardboard. No slug hits in it. I'm going to take 4 shots each on each one of these sighting systems. And I'm going to start with our control of the Primary Arms SLX 1X, the micro prism. We're going to be shooting Federal's true ball, low recoil, or law enforcement slugs. And I'm going to have you looking at me while I shoot these 4-round groups. We're going to go look at the group at the end, because keeping those groups small is a big deal. Being able to shoot this precisely at the edge of our home defense distance is something that we want the ability to do. 15 yards being the edge of a reasonable home defense distance for at least all of the homes around here. We also want to be able to manage that recoil and sight the gun quickly without fear of punishing recoil. So that's why I've got you guys looking at me while I shoot these groups, so that you can see the difference in how I'm managing recoil. You can see the difference in how I am able to get behind this gun, whether I'm able to take a high upright posture to stay away from the rear travel of the gun, or whether I'm having to really crowd in behind whatever sighting system I'm using, behind the receiver here, which generally, the more I have to crowd this receiver, the more painful, the less comfortable, the less speedy taking those precise shots is going to be. So starting off with the control, we're going to do 4 shots. I'm going to try and put these all right in the center of the head of this USPSA target, again 15 yards. Now, that's 4 shots on. We're going to look down here. We are going to have some wad hits. The way that you can tell a wad hit from a slug hit is the sharpness and the crispness of the edges. So we've got wads separating at this distance, and it looks like they're all going a little bit low. The wads, that is. We've got 1 wad here. You can see the tear in the paper, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 slug hits, right? You can see the crispness. You can actually see a little bit of a grease ring on the slug hits. That's how you know those are slug hits, not the wads. So all of those easily kept him inside the head, and I'm not taking a whole lot of time between shots. I'm able to cycle the gun reliably and rapidly, and just telling you, feel-wise, it's a very comfortable shooting experience. I'm up on the gun. I can take an upright posture. I can have a high, proud head, and that travel of that gun is not impacting my face at all. It's gliding along the face. Comfortable shooting experience. All right, guys. Now I have the Mossberg Shockwave configured with AR fixed iron sights. This represents any iron sights from any AR at this sight radius here. It's going to be very, very imprecise sighting science when you make adjustments with these. So certainly don't expect the factory adjustments to work here as far as this many clicks equals this many inches. But I was able to zero these fairly easily, even with this sight radius. Now, each one of the clicks for elevation, the way I have these set up, is giving me several inches of adjustment at 25 yards. So we're talking still gross sighting here, but a hell of a lot more precise than a fixed bead with no rear aperture whatsoever. Now for zeroing, I actually zeroed with the small aperture. And now I'm going to put this on the night aperture. Got the same target up. The only thing I've done is I've put a dot of white spray paint right center mass. I've got another 4 slugs in here, same slugs as before. And we are going to see, again, same test, 4 slugs on target, see how precisely I can do this. Now for these, because there is a bit of imprecision in how you mount this that is not present with any true optic, any red dot or micro prism or anything, I am going to come back to this compressed port between each shot and mount the gun again and press the shot. I'm not rushing through these, not for speed, it is for precision, but I want to mount the guns multiple times every time I shoot to show the little bit of imprecision that can happen with all iron sighting systems when you are not directly centered behind the sights. That does not exist with any optic. So, another 4 shots. Here we go. All right, guys. we'll go down and take a look. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm having to get my head a lot lower. I'm having to get my head a lot more centered on the gun behind the receiver. And that is less comfortable. It is. I'm getting some recoil into the face. Not nearly as pleasant of a shooting experience. And well, let's check precision here. Here is where I'm holding. And I'm doing my best to hold that way every single time. I am using the large aperture here, but I would not feel comfortable using the small aperture to get a rapid sight picture. I can get a precise sight picture that way, but it's not something that I'd use for home defense, so I'm not using that aperture here. This is a 15-yard shot. It should not be that difficult. Now, one thing we see is 1, 2, 3, and 4. I've got grease ring here. That's a wad. Grease ring here. That's a wad. Grease ring here. Wad. And grease ring. Wad. Well, are they on target? Yes. And at 15 yards, we are at the outer limits of what is defense, home defense realistic range. But it is far from the precision that we're given by any kind of red dot. Less comfortable because when I shoot these, I have to be very, very careful about getting my face right here behind the gun. When I'm on an optic, I am not directly behind the gun. I'm off to the side and I actually can cant the optic a little bit. I just can't do that with these irons. It is a much more difficult to hold them all in alignment. And well, guys, it just all of the conversations you've ever heard about iron sights versus optics, that all holds true here. I'm having to focus on keeping 3 things in alignment instead of superimposing one thing over the thing I want to shoot. All right, guys, I've reset the target, new target now, fresh white dot directly in the center, and I've reconfigured this Mossberg Shockwave back to what a lot of you seem to be using. Just the XS big dot. So you guys, I found you guys will often splurge for the XS big dot, but no optic, no rear sight at all. And again, 15 yards, we're gonna put 4 shots on. Now, I am aware that if I get all the way behind this gun and line up the bead, that I can get a decent sight picture there. I'm also aware that this is, just before I even shoot, I'll tell you, I know this is the least comfortable way to shoot these guns, with it needing to be so low on your face. You can see all the receiver, all of this receiver is lined up to really give me some troubles, some pain on the recoil impulse. So I've got a white dot up there as something to aim at, but I don't really have the ability to safely put the bead on this and be behind this gun without taking all of the recoil directly into my face. I've heard you guys comment that you have worry about like prolonged exposure to recoil, being hit in the face a lot, and brain injury. And I am worried about that too. I don't do that. When I shoot this gun, it drifts alongside my face. I'm not shooting it from behind the gun, because that will that's a road to long-term problems, right? You only get so many concussions. So I'm not doing that. I am going to sight over it, and at 15 yards, I know that round is going to be impacting pretty high if I am looking over the gun. Same cheek placement that I use for optics, it's just much less precise, guys. Let's do 4 rounds. I'll show you what I mean. Now, I'm going to be holding the bottom of the cardboard here for these 4 shots, and I'm going to align my eye as best I can, still having to get behind the gun to get my eye alignment, so it's still going to be less comfortable than an optic, even though I have my head high and detached from it, because if I were to come from the side, then I would lose even my left-right control over that, and that's unacceptable. But hopefully I can get all 4 of these slugs on that target at 15 yards. And again, so you guys know I'm not cheating you, it's still the same Federal True Ball law enforcement slugs that I'm using. All right, let's see if we can get 4 center mass. Unpleasant, guys. Here we go. 15 yards is not a long distance. It is a pretty long distance inside of a house, but it's a realistic distance that you might need to have to shoot. Now, I want you guys to see what I see. And oh, our light is on. I want you to see what I see. There is where I'm holding. The bead is right there. 1. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. This was my first shot. It just nicked the head. All of those holding down here. Now, grouping wise, can I be repeatable with it? Yeah, if I get the same cheek weld every time and do the same hold every time, I'm going to get the same results on target every time. But having to estimate your holdover with this extreme change, not good, guys. And also, even though I had my head proud, this was about as comfortable to shoot as the irons that I had configured here, but even less precise, right? Maybe more accurate as far as like, or maybe a smaller grouping without vertical stringing as much. But guys, the problem is with the irons, I could put the front sight post in the aperture and put it on target and squeeze the trigger at really any distance, and it's going to give me some similar size spread or group. Here, man, if we took 2 more steps back, 2 more yards, guys, and I would have thrown all 4 of those slugs over the target, even though I was holding down here. I don't think that's doable for, this is not a 15-yard gun. Maybe a 10-yard gun if you're just going to use a low bead. Now, knowing what I know, using just a big dot bead and my repeatable cheek weld that I always use, now knowing the holdover for this distance, maybe I can do better knowing what I know now with no bead at all. This is a factory Shockwave barrel. I just unscrewed the bead. Let's see what we get. Now I'm going to adjust my hold to try and actually hit that white dot, not hit so high. Same 1 ounce True Ball law enforcement slugs. Well, guys, let's take a look. Please understand that I know the hold now. So I am just adjusting that Kentucky windage, which is in a way, cheating, because you're never going to know how many yards exactly that bad guy is that you may have to engage in your home. And even if you put markers in your house, oh, that's this far, that's that far, a small change of a yard or two will dramatically affect where these are impacting if you don't have a front or a rear to put on the target and hold constant. If I had just a front sight to align and get my head behind to put in line with the bore, then maybe I could get some added precision. But well, let's just see. We've got all 4 of our shots here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Wad, 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 right? 1, 2, 3, 4. A little bit to the left, but guys, so was the big dot, right? That's just how I'm cheeking the gun. I'm not cheeking directly centered on it, which means that I'm getting left-right deviation. Not a crazy amount of left-right deviation with either of these, and pretty tight groups with both of these. But guys, I got to tell you, I'm holding here. Like, I have to back the camera off to tell you where I'm holding. Can we see the base of the target? I have the gun lined up there. As my eye looks over it, I'll set this up so that you have a point of view. This is what I'm seeing to get those hits. That's not great, guys. That's too much guesswork. That's not precision. That's fire and adjust, and that is not something we can afford to do. All right, here's our last sighting option that I have for us as far as a over the barrel or traditional sighting method. This is the UTG clamp-on front sight. I had high hopes for this. I think it's definitely an improvement over the big dot because, right, the issue that we're having is when we cheek this gun, our eye is as low as we can comfortably get it without being punched in the face really hard, and in line with the gun as much as we can without, again, being hurt or injured by the rearward travel on this. This sight being elevated gets closer to our line of sight as far as keeping parallel lines, right? We want parallel lines between our eyeball and the bore. So my eye is sitting, you know, you can see in the camera, my eye is sitting roughly 2 inches, maybe a little bit more above the barrel. And if there's no bead, then there's, right, 2 inches over 14 inches. You calculate the angle there. It's a lot of angular deviation that you have to kind of float in free space. And remember, the more we minimize that angular deviation there, the more precise our bead style sights are going to be. So we eliminated almost all of it with the irons, but with the minimal sight radius that we have between those irons, well, we have a lot of slop in when we're using the only aperture that would be functional for defense setup. I would expect that those irons would be every bit as precise as an optic if we actually had full-length pick rail to mount the front sight at the end of the barrel. I know that accessory exists, guys. That accessory is more than a high-quality optic plus a rail. So, no, it's definitely not going to be on the Poverty Shockwave project. And, well, as far as just testing it for irons, guys, get over it. Irons are never going to be as robust, as usable, as good in any way as just putting an optic on these guns. But let's see what we can do. Let's see if there's a significant improvement with having a taller bead, even taller than the XS Big Dot. Now I'm going to go back to my original hold here. So my belly button hold, And you saw with the, so with no bead at all, I was actually having to hold closer to the knees to get hits center mass. With the big dot, I was having to hold belt line, and that was still getting me headshots. So I'm gonna hold belt line again, and let's see if we get center mass hits at 15 yards. That's kind of my minimum, guys. If I can hold belt line, it's a thing that has symmetry in training, because a lot of the rifle technique at distance, you put a muzzle on the belt line, and you know you're going to hit somewhere between their belt line and their chin. Okay, for home defense distances and a 12 gauge, I think you're still very likely to get a single shot physical incapacitation with all of the good defense loads if you hit them center line anywhere in the torso. Because you've got so many pellets, it is pretty probable the more pellets you throw at that with appropriate penetration, the more probable it is that you are to get some sort of spinal CNS stoppage. So you will at least drop them. But right, there's not a whole lot of people in the world that have walked off a torso hit of buckshot. So let's see if we can get that center mass hit. I'm going to try and hit the white dot, but I am holding the bottom of the cardboard here. And again, 15 yards with our Federal 1-ounce True Ball Law Enforcement slug. I gotta tell you guys, it's still unpleasant. It's still far less pleasant to shoot than an optic. And I was feeling, when I came up on the gun, I was having to ensure that I had my face, my cheek, my eye directly centered behind the receiver. When I did not, I had some different impacts. So you guys know the way that I'm cheeking this, biased a little bit to one side, because I don't want to eat all that recoil. I want to glide that gun as much as I can, is pushing these shots a little bit to the left at 15 yards, few inches, right? Not a crazy amount. I'm holding right here, hoping for right here. And that's how it's going to be, guys. But at least with this, there's a significant difference, right? With the XS Big Dot, I'm holding right here and getting up here. But just by closing the distance, closing the gap, making those lines, the line of sight and the bore line, more parallel, I've got a pretty significant difference in point of impact. So I would say if I did this again, knowing this sight, knowing this UTG's height and where my cheek weld is, I would say that I'd feel comfortable actually holding more higher belly button, lower rib cage range, and I would probably be getting high thoracic shots there. All right, I'm going to do 3 more slugs with the UTG front sight, the clamp-on sight. But this time I'm just going to put the tip of the front sight, which is as elevated as I can get it right now. I'm going to put that on the white dot, press the trigger, and see what we get. So this is simulating as if I was not doing any holdover. I wasn't doing any distance calculation. I was just scared. Got the gun in my hand, middle of the night, came up and took a shot, and I'll do that 3 times. I'm gonna do that with a little bit of speed, you know, a little bit of urgency. And again, Federal 1-ounce Law Enforcement True Ball. Here we go. Okay. All right. was more of a snap sight picture, and I'll tell you this, the way that I mount a gun under pressure, you know, quickly, is, well, it's a little bit different than when I deliberately try and line everything up. It also makes it much more comfortable to shoot, so that was not beating me up nearly as much as the rest of the runs with all of, basically, anything except the optic. Let's see what the hits are like, though. So, I've got these 4 hits marked from our first run with the UTG where I was holding here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I have 1, 2, 3 right here. These are wad hits, guys. But 1, 2, 3. So, is that effective fire at 15 yards? Well, it's a 1 ounce slug, but we've got one that is close to being an A-zone hit. I'm going to say this is probably an immediately physically incapacitating hit. Guys, this is too close for comfort here. It is. But it would probably change somebody's behavior, seeing as how it's a 1 ounce slug, right? Now, if this was a buckshot pattern, you have errant shot going over the shoulder at this point. That's not okay. And you might have errant shot going off of the target right here, because remember, these targets are as wide as my shoulders, including my arms. If you actually want to count what a rib cage and body is, you take away the D zone from these targets. So maybe I clip an arm, maybe I clip a rib cage. It's not great, guys. It's not super reliable. It's not super safe or responsible fire, right? These have a high probability of throwing errant shot. Now, if I were only running this front sight, if I were only running this front clamp on sight, and I knew that, okay, I'm just going to always hold for a belly button, would I get pretty good hits, pretty meaningful hits with buckshot anywhere inside of the house? Probably. Maybe that belly button is just a little too low. Maybe I train myself to always hold like a low solar plexus, high abs. And I know that I'm always going to hit somewhere up here. But what we can say is this. Mounting it quickly, I get much more significant left-right deviation. I know I'm always pushing those shots to the left because I am off to the side of the receiver. It's much more comfortable to shoot that way, but I've got to know. And, well, let's see. The maximum hold is about 10 inches high at 15 yards. If we look at this here, even when I'm holding here, it's about 10 inches high at 15 yards. So you know you're going to be, what, from the point of the tip of the front sight, somewhere within 10 inches of that? I think it's doable, guys, but I hope you guys can see it is far from best case. Guys, thanks for watching. That does it for the sighting section, episode 1 of the Poverty Shockwave. I hope this highlights some of the reasons why I demand an optic on my serious do-work guns. Anyway, I appreciate you watching. If you want to support the channel, you want to help me out, you want to keep me paid so I can keep doing this, go to the link in the description, Patreon, show me some love there. Also, don't forget, like, subscribe, do the thing with all the things, and hit all the buttons that do all the stuff. As always, keep training, stay safe.